The first time Kang Ji-hoon met Tosin Ajayi, she was sitting cross-legged on the polished marble floor of the Kang mansion, clutching a stuffed giraffe twice her size. He was 5 years old, spoiled, and ready to announce to anyone who cared that he was the future heir of the Kang group. She was 4, fearless and unimpressed. "You can't sit here," Ji-hoon declared, his tiny arms folded. "This is my house." Tosin looked up, her dark eyes steady. "My mummy works here. That makes this my house too." "Mrs. Ajayi, the new nanny," gasped softly. But Mrs. Kang only laughed from the doorway. "Well, Ji-hoon," she said, "you may be heir to the company, but she's heir to the giraffe. You'll have to share." And so it began. From that day, Ji-hoon and Tosin became inseparable companions, though neither would admit it without a fight. At school, Ji-hoon's shiny lunchboxes and chauffeur-driven rides clashed with Tosin's scholarship grit and stubborn pride. He teased her for wearing the same sneakers too often. She mocked him for crying the first time he failed a math quiz. By the time they turned 12, their families had grown used to the sound of constant bickering echoing through the halls. "Stop following me," Ji-hoon snapped one afternoon, books clutched to his chest as he marched down the mansion hallway. "I'm not following you," Tosin shot back, matching his stride. "I'm going to the library. Maybe you should come too. You clearly need it after your last history grade." He glared. "That was one time." "Exactly," she said sweetly. "One time too many. Welcome to Munlyt Stories, where Munlyt meets myth. Love timeless tales? Then hit like, subscribe, and don't forget to tell us where you are watching from in the comment Join the Circle. Because every story begins with you. But beneath the sharp words lay something neither fully understood yet. Ji-hoon always saved her a seat in class, even if he pretended it was coincidence. Tosin always brought an extra pen, in case the rich boy forgets his. Their rivalry had edges, but it was stitched with quiet loyalty. The Kang family adored Tosin, treating her as more than the nanny's daughter. At birthdays and holidays, she sat at the table, her laughter blending with theirs. Ji-hoon's father often said, "This girl will argue her way into greatness one day." Tosin would grin, while Ji-hoon rolled his eyes and muttered, "She already argues too much." One evening, as Seoul's skyline glowed beyond the Kang mansion windows, Mrs. Ajayi tucked them both into the study to finish homework. Ji-hoon scribbled furiously, refusing to look at Tosin. She leaned over, peeking at his paper. "That's not how you spell Constitution," she said smugly. "Yes, it is," he argued, cheeks burning. "Nope. You missed an I. Want me to teach you?" His pencil snapped in half. She laughed so hard, she nearly fell off her chair. And yet, when Tosin yawned moments later, Ji-hoon pushed his untouched slice of cake toward her. "Here. You like chocolate more than me." She blinked. "Thanks." Neither spoke again, but something shifted quietly between them. Rivalry was easy. Friendship was natural. Whatever this was becoming, it was only just beginning. By the time Tosin Ajayi turned 16, she had already earned a reputation at their elite international high school, the scholarship girl who refused to be intimidated. Teachers praised her sharp answers, classmates admired her grit, and Ji-hoon, well, Ji-hoon pretended not to care. Pretended, because in truth, every one of Tosin's achievements felt like a direct challenge. "Top of the class again?" he asked one morning, leaning against her locker with an infuriating smirk. Tosin slid her books inside, refusing to look impressed. "Someone has to keep you humble." "I'm already humble," he shot back. "You! Please. If arrogance were a subject, you'd get perfect scores." The hallway around them burst into laughter. Ji-hoon glared, but Tosin's smile only widened. Their classmates had grown used to the spectacle, Kang Ji-hoon and Tosin Ajayi sparring like rival politicians at every chance. That semester, things grew even more intense when the school announced a mock trial competition. The winner would secure a recommendation letter from one of Seoul's most prestigious law professors. For Ji-hoon, it was a chance to prove he wasn't just a Chaebol heir riding on his family's name. For Tosin, it was her ticket to an international university scholarship. Naturally, they both signed up. Naturally, they ended up as opponents. "Don't take it personally when I destroy you," Ji-hoon whispered as they stood outside the auditorium, waiting for their turn. "Destroy me?" Tosin scoffed. Ji-hoon, you once argued with a vending machine because it didn't give you your soda. You're not ready. His ears turned red, but before he could retort, the teacher called them in. The audience hushed as Ji-hoon presented his case, all charm and polish, gesturing like a future CEO giving a boardroom pitch. Tosin listened with narrowed eyes, scribbling notes furiously. When it was her turn, she rose with calm confidence, dismantling his arguments one by one with surgical precision. The crowd gasped. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. By the time the judges announced the winner, Tosin, the room erupted in applause. She gave a little bow, hiding the triumphant sparkle in her eyes. Ji-hoon slumped in his chair, sulking. Later, Tosin found him in the cafeteria, poking angrily at a bowl of rice. She slid into the seat opposite him. You were good, she admitted. You were better, he muttered. Want me to teach you how to win next time? She teased, tilting her head. He shot her a look that could have burned holes through the table. But then, after a pause, he smirked. Careful, Tosin. If you keep gloating, people will think you actually like me. She laughed, tossing her hair back. Don't flatter yourself. But later that night, as she studied in her small room, Tosin replayed his words in her mind. Like him, impossible. He was arrogant, spoiled, and insufferable. And yet, when she remembered the way his voice cracked just slightly when he congratulated her, her chest tightened in a way she couldn't explain. Winter swept across Seoul, frosting the windows of the Kong mansion and filling the hallways with the smell of roasted chestnuts. Tosin Ajayi sat curled on the leather couch, her textbooks spread around her like a fortress. She had an exam the next day, but her focus kept slipping. Don't you ever take breaks? Ji-hoon asked, strolling in with his hands stuffed into his pockets. His hair was perfectly styled, his sweater expensive and annoyingly effortless. Don't you ever study? Tosin shot back, not looking up from her notes. I don't need to, he said smugly. People like me are born ready. Ready to fail, maybe. Before Ji-hoon could answer, the doorbell chimed. Moments later, a girl swept into the room, a tall, polished beauty with perfect bangs and a designer scarf. She beamed at Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon, I didn't know you were home. Tosin blinked. Of course. Min Seo, the class president. Pretty, popular, and clearly smitten with Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon grinned and gestured for her to sit beside him. Min Seo, this is Tosin. Tosin, Min Seo. Min Seo's polite smile barely reached her eyes. Tosin returned it with the same strained civility. For the next hour, Tosin's notes went untouched as she endured Min Seo's syrupy laughter and Ji-hoon's easy charm. They looked like a perfect pair, him with his confident grin, her with her delicate giggles. Something hot and unfamiliar curled in Tosin's chest. Finally, she snapped her book shut. I'll just study somewhere quieter. Ji-hoon frowned. Why? We're not that loud. You. Never, she said coolly, sweeping her books into her bag. I just don't want to inhale all this perfume. Min Seo gasped. Ji-hoon stifled a laugh. Tosin, he warned. What? She said innocently. It's strong. Must be expensive. With that, she marched upstairs, leaving Ji-hoon bewildered. Later that week, Ji-hoon got his turn. Tosin was at the school library, chatting with David Kim, the charming new transfer student. David was smart, with an easy smile and a habit of leaning just a little too close when Tosin spoke. From across the room, Ji-hoon's stomach twisted. He stormed over. Tosin, he said tightly, we're late for lunch. She looked up, startled. We are. I thought. Yes. Now. David raised an eyebrow. Relax, man. We were just talking about the debate club. Exactly, Ji-hoon snapped. She debates too much already. Tosin's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. But Ji-hoon was already tugging her toward the door. Once outside, she yanked her hand free. What is wrong with you? You shouldn't waste time with guys like him, Ji-hoon muttered. Oh, so now you get to decide who I talk to, she shot back. Last I checked, you were busy entertaining Min Seo. His jaw clenched. That was different. Of course it was, Tosin said, her voice sharp. Because when you laugh with someone, it's charming. But when I do, it's a crime. They stood there, glaring, breath fogging in the cold air. Neither would admit it, but the truth was obvious. Beneath the jealousy, the rivalry, and the sharp words, something far more dangerous was beginning to grow. Senior year swept in with its usual whirlwind, final exams, university applications, and the one event everyone whispered about, the winter prom. Tosin Ajayi wasn't particularly interested. Dresses and dances seemed trivial compared to the scholarship forms stacked on her desk. But when her classmates cornered her in the cafeteria, squealing about who was asking whom, she found herself dragged into the chaos. "So, Tosin," one girl teased, "are you going with David?" Tosin blinked. "David Kim. We're just friends. Friends who've been studying together every other evening," another chimed. Before she could reply, a familiar voice cut through. "She's not going with him." Everyone turned. Ji-hoon stood at the end of the table, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Tosin folded her arms. "And why not?" "Because," Ji-hoon said smoothly, "he's not good enough." The cafeteria erupted in laughter, but Tosin's cheeks flamed. She rose, meeting his gaze head-on. "Funny. I don't recall needing your approval." Ji-hoon smirked. "That's because you don't realize how terrible your taste is." The students buzzed with excitement, but Tosin simply grabbed her tray and walked out, muttering, "Unbelievable." 2 weeks later, prom night arrived. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and soft music, students swirling in elegant gowns and sharp tuxedos. Tosin stepped through the doors in a flowing emerald dress that caught the light with every move. Heads turned, whispers followed. Ji-hoon froze mid-conversation when he saw her. He had seen Tosin in uniforms, hoodies, even covered in ink stains from late-night study sessions, but never like this. His chest tightened in a way he didn't care to name. Unfortunately for him, David was already at Tosin's side, offering his arm with a grin. Ji-hoon's date, Minesio, of course, noticed his stare and leaned in. "You can't be serious." "Her." He didn't answer. The night stretched on in a blur of music and chatter. Tosin laughed as David spun her across the dance floor, the skirt of her dress fanning out like a green flame. Ji-hoon watched from the edge, every laugh a needle in his chest. Finally, he cut across the floor, tapping David on the shoulder. "Mind if I steal her for one dance?" Tosin raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because," Ji-hoon said, his voice low, "you're stepping on his shoes." David laughed and released her. Ji-hoon pulled Tosin close, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the two of them. "You're jealous," she whispered, her lips curving. "Of him." "Please," he scoffed, though his grip tightened. "I just couldn't watch you embarrass yourself any longer." "Liar." The music swelled. Their banter faded, leaving only the sharp rhythm of their hearts. Ji-hoon looked down at her, and for the first time, he wondered if rivalry had been nothing more than a mask. Tosin broke the silence first, smirking. "Don't look at me like that, Ji-hoon. People will think." The days after prom were a minefield. Neither Tosin nor Ji-hoon mentioned their dance, but the memory lingered like static in the air. Every time their eyes met in class, it was as though the ballroom still surrounded them, chandeliers glittering overhead. Tosin hated it, or at least, she told herself she did. "Focus," she muttered one afternoon in the study lounge, slamming her textbook open. Across the table, Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair, arms folded behind his head. "You've read the same paragraph 5 times. Because you keep staring at me," she snapped. "I wasn't staring." "You were." "Fine," he said smoothly, leaning forward now. "Maybe I was. Is that distracting?" Her pulse jumped, but she forced a smirk. "Only because I feel my IQ dropping every time you look at me." He chuckled, low and warm. "That's not what you said at prom." Her cheeks heated. "I didn't say anything at prom." "You didn't have to." For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Then the door banged open, breaking the spell. A group of students streamed in, gossiping loudly, and Tosin snapped her book shut. "Study's over," she announced, grabbing her bag. Ji-hoon smirked. "Running away." "Walking away," she corrected, breezing past him. "There's a difference." The tension didn't end there. Weeks later, during a school trip to Busan, fate conspired to throw them together again. The class had gone hiking along a coastal trail, and Tosin, distracted by the breathtaking ocean view, tripped over a rock. "Careful!" Ji-hoon said, catching her before she could fall. Her hands landed on his chest, his grip steady around her waist. The world tilted, narrowing to the space between them. For a heartbeat, neither moved. "You should watch where you're going," he said softly, though his eyes searched hers with something uncharacteristically serious. "You should let me go," she whispered. "Maybe I don't want to." Her breath caught. His face was so close, she could count the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. The teasing mask had slipped, and what lay beneath was far more dangerous. "Tosin!" a classmate shouted from ahead. They jolted apart like guilty teenagers. Ji-hoon cleared his throat, stuffing his hands into his pockets. Tosin brushed imaginary dirt off her skirt, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Thanks," she muttered, refusing to meet his gaze. "No problem," he said, but his voice was rougher than usual. That night at the hotel, Tosin lay awake staring at the ceiling. She replayed the moment by the cliffside over and over, the warmth of his hands, the way his eyes had softened, the nearly there brush of his lips. It was ridiculous. They were rivals, best friends, annoyances, anything but that. And yet, as she turned on her side and buried her face in the pillow, one truth pulsed stubbornly in her chest. For the first time, Tosin Ajayi wasn't sure if she wanted to win against Kang Ji-hoon. She might just want him instead. Thank you so much for staying with us till this very point of the story. If you are enjoying it, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to know where you are watching from, the lessons you learned from this story, and your thoughts on how we can continue improving to give you the very best. Thank you. Graduation day arrived with blaring camera flashes and proud parents waving from the stands. Kang Ji-hoon stood tall in his gown, adjusting his cap with an air of effortless confidence. Beside him, Tosin Ajayi wrestled with her tassel, muttering under her breath. "Don't strangle yourself," Ji-hoon teased. "That cap doesn't deserve the satisfaction." "Neither do you," she shot back, yanking the tassel into place. Their classmates laughed as the two marched to their seats, side by side as always, though neither would admit they liked it that way. By evening, the Kang mansion buzzed with celebration. Mrs. Ajayi beamed proudly from her corner of the living room while Tosin stood awkwardly near the buffet table, balancing a plate of food. "You should smile more," Ji-hoon murmured, appearing at her elbow. "I'm smiling on the inside," she replied, stabbing a meatball with unnecessary force. He chuckled. "Well, at least pretend. You're going to law school, Tosin. That's worth celebrating." "So are you." "Yes, but everyone already expected that of me. You fought for it." His voice was warm, genuine. Tosin blinked, thrown off balance. Ji-hoon rarely let his sincerity show. Before she could reply, Min Seo approached, linking her arm through Ji-hoon's. "Ji-hoon, come take pictures with me." Tosin quickly looked away, suddenly fascinated by her food. The smile she'd been fighting off moments earlier vanished. The summer flew by in a blur of packing, paperwork, and goodbyes. And then came the twist no one expected. Ji-hoon and Tosin had both been accepted into the same law program at Seoul National University. On their first day, Tosin stepped onto campus, her scholarship badge pinned neatly to her blazer. She barely had time to admire the sprawling buildings before Ji-hoon appeared at her side. "Surprise!" he announced, spreading his arms. Her eyes widened. "You? Here? Of course. Did you really think I'd let you run this school without competition?" Tosin groaned. "This campus was supposed to be my fresh start. And now it's your familiar nightmare," he said cheerfully, falling into step beside her. Law school proved even more intense than high school. Professors drilled them with endless case studies, debates stretched late into the night, and mock trials pushed every student to their limits. Naturally, Ji-hoon and Tosin ended up as rivals again. One afternoon, during a courtroom exercise, Ji-hoon delivered his argument with smooth precision. He turned to face Tosin, smirking as if daring her to top it. She did. With icy logic and razor-sharp wit, she dismantled his case piece by piece. The professor clapped. The class applauded. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened, but his eyes glimmered with something more than annoyance. After class, he caught up with her. "You didn't have to humiliate me that badly." "Humiliate?" Tosin smirked. "I was being merciful. Next time, I won't hold back." Ji-hoon laughed despite himself. You're impossible. And you love it, she teased, brushing past him. He froze. She hadn't meant it literally. She never did, but the word hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. That night, as the campus lights glowed against the Seoul sky, Ji-hoon admitted something he hadn't before. For the first time, he wasn't sure he wanted to beat Tosin Ajayi. He wanted her to stand beside him. The library at Seoul National University was meant to be a sanctuary of silence. But wherever Kang Ji-hoon and Tosin Ajayi went, peace was a luxury no one could afford. Move your books, Ji-hoon said, nudging Tosin's pile of case law aside as he slid into the chair across from her. Tosin didn't even look up. There are 3 empty tables right there. Yes, but this one has the best light. And you're already here. 2 birds, 1 stone. She groaned. You're impossible. And yet, he said with a grin, you never seem to escape me. Their classmates whispered and chuckled around them, already used to the daily sparring. Some even placed quiet bets on who would outlast the other in their endless competition. That week, their professor announced a joint assignment. Pairs of students would prepare a mock trial together. The names were drawn randomly. Of course, fate, or perhaps the amused professor, paired Ji-hoon and Tosin. When the announcement came, Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair, smug. Looks like destiny agrees with me. Tosin pinched the bridge of her nose. Or maybe the universe just enjoys watching me suffer. Their first planning session was a disaster. Ji-hoon wanted flair, dramatic openings, sharp gestures, a performance fit for a courtroom drama. Tosin wanted precision, cold facts, airtight logic, zero theatrics. You can't bore the jury into siding with you, Ji-hoon argued. And you can't flirt your way into a verdict, Tosin shot back. Who said anything about flirting? She raised an eyebrow. Please, your eyebrows do half your work for you. He sputtered, caught off guard, while Tosin smirked triumphantly. Still, as the days wore on, their arguments began to blur into something else. Ji-hoon grudgingly admitted Tosin's meticulous preparation made their case unshakable. Tosin, in turn, couldn't deny that Ji-hoon's confidence gave their presentation fire. Late one evening, they were still in the library, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered notes. Tosin rubbed her temples. This is hopeless. We'll never agree. Ji-hoon leaned across the table, lowering his voice. Then let's compromise. You give me 5 minutes for theatrics. I'll back every argument with your evidence. She blinked, surprised. You're actually suggesting balance. I'm evolving, he said, mock serious. It's called growth. You should try it sometime. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. The night of the mock trial arrived. Standing side by side, Ji-hoon opened with his trademark flair, commanding the room with confidence. Then Tosin stepped forward, her words cutting like a blade, stripping the opposing argument to shreds. The combination was electric. The class erupted in applause. Their professor nodded approvingly. Back in their seats, Ji-hoon leaned close and whispered, Admit it, we're unstoppable together. Tosin smirked. Don't get used to it. But as she packed her notes, her heart betrayed her with a steady, unfamiliar rhythm. She wasn't sure what scared her more, losing to Ji-hoon, or realizing she might actually need him. Law school had its fair share of challenges, endless reading lists, late-night case studies, and professors who seemed to thrive on impossible deadlines. But for Ji-hoon, the biggest challenge was watching Tosin Ajayi laugh at another man's jokes. It happened during a legal clinic project. Tosin had been paired with Daniel Park, a tall, broad-shouldered student with an easy smile and a knack for charm. Together, they worked on drafting contracts for small business owners. Ji-hoon had no business being there, but somehow, he found himself lingering in the clinic office, pretending to read case files while keeping one eye firmly on Tosin. Daniel leaned close to explain a clause, and Tosin burst into laughter at something he whispered. Ji-hoon's pen snapped in his hand. Problem? Tosin asked sweetly, noticing a scowl. Ji-hoon forced a smile. None at all. Just wondering how you managed to work while giggling like a high schooler. Her eyes narrowed. At least I'm working. What exactly are you doing here? Supervising, he said smoothly. Supervising what? Your questionable taste in partners. Daniel looked between them, amused. Should I give you two some privacy? Tosin flushed. No. Please. Ignore him. But Ji-hoon wasn't ignoring anything. Every smile Tosin threw Daniel's way felt like a punch to the gut. The tables turned a week later when Tosin spotted Ji-hoon at the campus cafe with Hannah Lee, a law student known for her beauty and her sharp tongue. Hannah leaned forward as she spoke, her hand brushing Ji-hoon's arm. Ji-hoon laughed, actually laughed at something she said. Tosin nearly dropped her coffee. Careful, Hannah teased when she noticed Tosin glaring from across the room. Jealous girlfriends make terrible witnesses. Tosin stiffened. I'm not his girlfriend. Exactly, Hannah said smoothly, turning back to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon caught Tosin's glare and smirked. Don't look at me like that, Tosin. You'll make Hannah think you care. I don't, Tosin said quickly, though her voice came out sharper than intended. Her pulse raced all through the night. She hated seeing him with Hannah, hated how easily he charmed her. But more than that, she hated the sinking realization in her chest. She might care more than she wanted to admit. The tension came to a head during a moot court practice. Ji-hoon and Tosin, once again on opposing teams, clashed fiercely. You're arguing emotions, not facts, Tosin snapped in front of the class. And you're arguing like a robot, Ji-hoon shot back. Better a robot than a clown. The professor raised an eyebrow. Enough. If you two spend half as much energy on your cases as you do on each other, you'd both be top of the class. The room chuckled, but neither Ji-hoon nor Tosin smiled. Their glares lingered too long, the air between them charged with something no one else could name. That night, alone in his room, Ji-hoon admitted it silently. It wasn't the cases that kept him awake. It was Tosin Ajayi, her laugh, her glare, her fire, and the terrifying thought that one day, someone else might win her completely. Mid-semester brought the annual Law Society Gala, an evening where professors, alumni, and students gathered in tuxedos and gowns to network. For most students, it was an opportunity to make connections. For Ji-hoon, it was a test of endurance because Tosin Ajayi looked breathtaking. She swept into the ballroom in a midnight blue dress, her hair pinned elegantly, her smile effortless. Ji-hoon's throat went dry. Unfortunately, she wasn't alone. Daniel Park escorted her in, hand resting lightly on her back. Ji-hoon nearly crushed the champagne flute in his hand. Easy, Hannah Lee murmured beside him. You look like you're about to sue him for touching her. Ji-hoon forced a smile. Just admiring the competition. Hannah smirked knowingly. The evening dragged on. Tosin and Daniel laughed together by the buffet, their heads bent close in conversation. Ji-hoon's blood boiled. Finally, unable to bear it, he crossed the room. Mind if I cut in? He asked, voice too smooth to be casual. Daniel raised an eyebrow but stepped aside. Ji-hoon offered his hand. Tosin hesitated, then placed hers in his. The orchestra swelled. Ji-hoon pulled her onto the dance floor. You're glaring again, Tosin said softly, her lips curving. Am I? He spun her. Maybe I don't like your date. He's not my date, she shot back. He's my partner for the gala project. Looked more than professional to me. Funny, Tosin countered. I thought you'd be busy with Hannah. Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. She's just a friend. Tosin smirked. Then stop looking at me like I'm stealing your bride. He froze. Their eyes locked, heat surging between them. You are, he whispered, before he could stop himself. Her breath hitched. What? But the song ended, the room erupting in applause. Ji-hoon dropped her hand like it burned him. Later, on the balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, Tosin found him leaning against the railing, tie loosened, eyes distant. You didn't finish your sentence, she said quietly. He turned, startled. What sentence? The one where you said I was stealing something. He studied her, the city lights reflected in his gaze. For a moment, the air was thick with unsaid truths. Finally, he exhaled. Forget it, Tosin. She frowned. Ji-hoon. No, he cut in, shaking his head. If I say it now, it'll ruin everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Tosin's heart pounded. She wanted to push, to demand answers. But instead, she forced a laugh. Fine. Keep your secrets. Just don't expect me to lose sleep over them. She turned to leave. Too late, Ji-hoon murmured under his breath, so softly she almost didn't hear. Her steps faltered, but she didn't look back. Inside, the music swelled again. Outside, under Seoul's endless sky, two rivals stood on the edge of something far more dangerous than competition, something neither was ready to name. The week after the gala was torture. Tosin Ajayi tried to bury herself in case briefs, pretending she hadn't heard Kang Ji-hoon's whispered words on the balcony. But every time she opened a book, his voice echoed in her head. If I say it now, it'll ruin everything. What did that even mean? One rainy evening, Tosin stayed late in the library. The storm outside rattled the tall windows, and most students had already gone home. She was halfway through drafting notes when a familiar voice broke the silence. Of course you're still here. She looked up to see Ji-hoon, damp from the rain, hair slightly tousled, holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one on her desk. I don't drink pity coffee, she said, though her fingers curled around the warm cup anyway. It's not pity, he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. It's strategy. If I keep you caffeinated, maybe you won't fall asleep in the middle of your cross-examinations. She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth twitched. You're insufferable. And yet here I am. They worked in silence for a while, the storm outside cocooning them in a strange intimacy. Then, without warning, the power flickered and went out. The library plunged into darkness. Tosin let out a startled laugh. Well, that's convenient. Ji-hoon's voice was closer than she expected. Don't panic. I'll protect you. Protect me? From what? Footnotes. From the ghosts of failed law students. She snorted, but when she turned her head, his face was only inches away, illuminated faintly by the glow of his phone. His eyes met hers, warm and unguarded. For once, there was no smirk, no shield of arrogance. Just Ji-hoon. Her breath caught. You're staring again. Maybe I want to. His voice was low, rough. The air between them thickened. Tosin's pulse pounded as his gaze dropped, lingering on her lips. He leaned closer, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their noses brushed. The space between them shrank to a heartbeat. Then the lights blazed back on. They jerked apart, both blinking furiously. Ji-hoon cleared his throat, shoving papers into his bag. We should finish this later. Tosin tried to steady her voice. Yes, later. But her cheeks burned, and her hands trembled as she gathered her notes. Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Ji-hoon walked her home, their silence heavier than their usual banter. When they reached the dormitory steps, he paused. Tosin! She looked up, heart racing. He hesitated, then shook his head. Never mind. Good night. She watched him walk away, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. For the first time, Tosin Ajayi wasn't sure if she wanted the rivalry to end or if she wanted it to burn brighter until it consumed them both. By the middle of the semester, Tosin Ajayi and Kang Ji-hoon had gained an unshakable reputation at Seoul National University. If they weren't battling each other in class debates, they were spotted studying late into the night, arguing over statutes with the intensity of courtroom rivals. Naturally, the rumors started. Are they dating? One student whispered as Tosin walked past. No way. They hate each other, another replied. Exactly. That's why it makes sense. Tosin pretended not to hear, but her ears burned. She dropped into her usual library seat, only to find Ji-hoon already there, grinning. You're late, he teased. I wasn't aware we had a schedule, she shot back. You should be. People think we're attached at the hip anyway. Her head snapped up. Excuse me. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Haven't you heard? Apparently, you and I are the talk of campus. Tosin rolled her eyes, but her heart skipped. Then we should probably spend less time together. Ji-hoon smirked. Or more. If we're going to be the subject of gossip, might as well give them a good story. She threw a pen cap at him. Things got worse when Hannah Lee fanned the flames. During a group study session, Hannah sat much too close to Ji-hoon, flipping her hair and laughing at his jokes. So, Ji-hoon, Hannah said loudly enough for Tosin to hear, are the rumors true? Are you secretly dating Tosin? Ji-hoon's eyes flicked to Tosin, who was scribbling furiously in her notebook. Why do you care? He said coolly. Because if you're not, Hannah purred, maybe you should consider someone less argumentative. Tosin's pen snapped in half. Ink splattered across her notes. Ji-hoon burst out laughing, earning himself a deadly glare from Tosin. Later, in the hallway, Tosin shoved her ruined notes into her bag. "You think this is funny?" "Yes," Ji-hoon said simply. "You could have corrected her." He shrugged. "Why would I deny it? Unless," he leaned closer. "Do you want me to?" Tosin's breath caught, but she forced a scoff. "Please. The day I date you is the day pigs fly." He grinned. "Then keep your eyes on the sky." That night, Tosin tried to focus on her case briefs, but her mind replayed the look in Ji-hoon's eyes when Hannah asked the question. He hadn't laughed it off, hadn't pushed Hannah away, but he hadn't denied it either. And when he leaned in, asking if she wanted him to correct the rumor, why had her chest tightened? She closed her books with a sigh. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. Yet, as the city lights glowed outside her window, Tosin couldn't shake the truth that haunted her. The rumors weren't entirely wrong. Because somewhere between rivalry and loyalty, between arguments and laughter, something real had begun to take root. And denial was becoming harder by the day. The tension between Tosin Ajayi and Kang Ji-hoon reached new heights during the inter-university moot court competition. Students from across Seoul gathered to watch the brightest young legal minds battle it out. Naturally, Tosin and Ji-hoon ended up on opposing teams. Ji-hoon's team opened with confidence. His arguments were smooth, his delivery flawless, his charm undeniable. The audience hung on his every word. Tosin's chest tightened, not with intimidation, but with the infuriating knowledge that he was good. When it was her turn, Tosin rose gracefully, her voice slicing through the courtroom with precision. She countered every point, dismantling his case like it was child's play. By the time she finished, even Ji-hoon had to fight a smile. But the victory was his. The judges ruled in Ji-hoon's favor, praising his logic and clarity. His classmates erupted in applause. He accepted it with a proud smile, until he noticed Tosin standing stiffly at the edge of the stage, his jaw tight. Afterward, in the lobby, he found her leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "Don't sulk," he teased. "It doesn't suit you." "I'm not sulking," she muttered. "You lost gracefully in front of the entire city." Her eyes narrowed. "Gracefully?" "Fine," he said sweetly. "You lost dramatically." "Happy." For a moment, they stared at each other, the tension sharp as glass. Then a voice interrupted. "Tosin!" Daniel Park jogged over, grinning. "That was incredible. You were brilliant." He caught Tosin's hand and squeezed it. Ji-hoon's entire body went rigid. "She knows," he said flatly. "You don't need to hold her hand to remind her." Daniel chuckled. "Relax, man. We're celebrating." But Ji-hoon was already moving. He pulled Tosin's hand free and stepped between them, his eyes flashing. "Find someone else to celebrate with." "Ji-hoon!" Tosin hissed, shoving him back. "What is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with him?" Ji-hoon shot back. "He doesn't know when to keep his hands to himself." Tosin folded her arms. "And you do." The hallway emptied around them, students pretending not to listen. The air buzzed with unspoken words. Finally, Tosin shook her head. "You're unbelievable." She turned to leave, but Ji-hoon caught her wrist. She froze. "Don't walk away," he said, his voice rougher than she'd ever heard. "Then let go." "I can't." The words hung between them, raw and unguarded. Before she could reply, he pulled her closer, their faces inches apart. "Ji-hoon," she whispered, though it sounded more like a plea. And then, finally, he kissed her. It wasn't smooth or calculated. It was messy, desperate, the kind of kiss that burned through years of rivalry and denial. Tosin's hands pushed against his chest, but only for a second before curling into his shirt. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "This doesn't change anything," Tosin managed, though her trembling voice betrayed her. Ji-hoon smirked faintly. "Then why do you look like you want me to do it again?" She glared, but her silence was answer enough. The morning after the kiss, Tosin Ajayi marched into class determined to act as though nothing had happened. She kept her chin high, her notes perfectly arranged, her expression carved from ice. It lasted exactly 2 minutes. Because Ji-hoon strolled in late, hair tousled, tie loose, a grin tugging at his lips. When his eyes found hers, that grin turned wicked. "Morning, partner," he drawled, sliding into the seat beside her. She stiffened. "Don't call me that." "What should I call you then?" His voice dipped low. "Girlfriend." Her pen nearly snapped in half. In your dreams. Last night didn't feel like a dream, he whispered. Tosin's cheeks burned. She shoved her notebook in front of his face to block his smirk. Focus! The professor's starting. But Ji-hoon spent the entire lecture stealing glances, clearly enjoying her discomfort. Tosin scribbled furiously in her notes, ignoring the way her pulse raced every time his knee brushed hers under the table. At lunch, things only grew worse. Their classmates, who had apparently seen them slip out together after the moot court, were buzzing with speculation. Are you two dating now? One girl asked eagerly. No, Tosin said instantly. Yes, Ji-hoon said at the same time. The table erupted in laughter. Tosin glared at him, mortified. We are not dating. Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair, unbothered. Fine. We're not dating. We're just kissing for sport. She kicked him under the table. Hard. That evening, Tosin hid in the library, desperate for quiet. She buried herself in textbooks, headphones in, blocking out the world. But of course, Ji-hoon found her. He dropped into the chair across from her. Are you avoiding me? Yes, she said flatly. Good. Because I was avoiding you too. She blinked. Then why are you here? Because I missed annoying you. Tosin groaned. You're exhausting. And yet, here you are, still sitting across from me. Her lips twitched despite herself. She hated how easily he cracked her defenses. They worked in silence for a while, the tension between them thick but oddly comforting. Finally, Ji-hoon leaned forward, his voice softer. About last night. Tosin's heart stuttered. What about it? He hesitated, then shrugged. Forget it. She frowned. You can't bring it up and then drop it. Sure I can, he said with a grin. It's one of my many talents. Her glare softened into reluctant laughter. But when she went to bed that night, Tosin realized something unsettling. She wasn't angry about the kiss. She was angry because she wanted it to happen again. And she had no idea what that meant for the war she and Ji-hoon had been fighting their whole lives. The next week was chaos. Between midterms, internships, and endless group projects, Tosin Ajayi barely had time to breathe. Yet no matter where she turned, Kang Ji-hoon was there, smirking in the lecture hall, leaning too close in the library, stealing her pens by accident. It was infuriating. And worse, it was distracting. One evening, she arrived at the moot court room for extra practice, only to find Ji-hoon already there, tossing a stress ball in the air. You're late, he said. I wasn't aware we had a meeting, Tosin replied, setting her books down. We don't, he said, catching the ball. I just knew you'd come. You're predictable like that. Her eyes narrowed. Predictable? Exactly, he said smoothly. Predictably brilliant. Which is why I need your help. She folded her arms. Since when do you admit needing me? Since always. I just hide it better. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. She turned back to her notes, hoping he didn't notice the blush creeping up her neck. They ran through case arguments, their voices echoing in the empty hall. At first, it was the usual back and forth. Sharp words, playful jabs, exasperated sighs. But then the practice grew heated. Ji-hoon pressed harder, his arguments sharper, his eyes locked on hers like it was more than a debate. Tosin fought back with equal fire, her voice rising, her heartbeat pounding. When she landed her final rebuttal, she slammed her folder shut in triumph. Checkmate, she said breathlessly. Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment, chest rising and falling. You drive me insane. Good, she shot back. That means I'm winning. But instead of another retort, Ji-hoon closed the distance between them in 3 quick strides. Before Tosin could react, his hand cupped her cheek. This time, there was no hesitation. No power outage, no convenient excuse. He kissed her deliberately, fiercely, as if daring her to deny what was happening. Tosin froze for half a second, then melted against him, her hands clutching his blazer. The kiss was fire and thunder, years of rivalry colliding with something deeper neither had dared admit. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. That, Ji-hoon said, voice hoarse, was not an accident. Tosin's heart raced. No, it wasn't. They stared at each other, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy in the silence. Finally, Tosin found her voice. This changes everything. Ji-hoon's lips curved into a grin. Good. I'm tired of pretending. Her eyes widened, but before she could reply, he gathered his books, walking toward the door with infuriating confidence. See you tomorrow, partner, he called over his shoulder. Tosin stood frozen in the moot courtroom, her pulse still racing. For the first time, she realized she was no longer fighting Ji-hoon. She was fighting herself. By the following week, Tosin Ajayi had convinced herself the kiss hadn't happened. She buried it under case briefs and endless readings, rehearsed arguments in her head, and ignored the way her lips still tingled when she thought about it. But Ji-hoon had no intention of letting her forget. During class, he slid a folded note onto her desk. You missed a spot of lipstick. Tosin glanced up, horrified. He smirked. She wiped her mouth furiously, only to realize she wasn't even wearing lipstick. She crumpled the note and kicked him under the table. Later, in the library, he leaned close while pretending to check her notes. You're blushing again. I'm not. You are. Stop looking at me. Impossible. The worst part was that Tosin didn't hate it. She told herself she did, but every stolen glance, every brush of his hand against hers, set her pulse racing. It didn't take long before their classmates started noticing. Why are you always studying with Ji-hoon? Lee asked one afternoon, eyeing her suspiciously. Because he needs the help, Tosin replied quickly. Ji-hoon, overhearing, leaned in. Correction, I don't need the help. I just enjoy her company. Tosin's jaw clenched. Do you want everyone to think we're dating? He smirked. Maybe I do. Her glare could have melted steel, but her cheeks betrayed her with a blush. One evening, Tosin headed to the moot court hall to retrieve a forgotten book. The room was dark, quiet, until the door clicked shut behind her. You again, she sighed, spinning to find Ji-hoon leaning casually against the wall. You left this, he said, holding up her book. She reached for it, but he didn't let go. Instead, he tugged her gently closer. Why do you keep pretending this isn't happening? Because it can't, she whispered, though her fingers tightened on the book. Why not? Because we'll ruin everything, she said. The friendship, the rivalry, the whatever this is. Ji-hoon searched her face. Or maybe we'll make it better. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them hummed, the weight of unspoken feelings pressing down. Finally, Tosin sighed and yanked her book free. You're reckless, she muttered. And you like it, he said, grinning. She left before he could see her smile. But recklessness had a way of snowballing. By the end of the week, Ji-hoon was walking her to class more often, sitting closer than necessary, finding excuses to study late. Their classmates noticed the shift, whispering in corners. And though Tosin rolled her eyes, though she denied everything, her heart betrayed her. Because every time Ji-hoon's hand brushed hers under the table, she didn't pull away. And every time he leaned close, teasing, she wondered how long they could keep this secret before the world, and her own resolve caught up with them. 4 weeks, Tosin Ajayi and Kang Ji-hoon perfected the art of secrecy. They studied together, bickered in class as usual, and kept their rivalry alive for the world to see. But behind closed doors, the line between banter and affection blurred dangerously. Like now, in the quiet corner of the law library, Ji-hoon leaned across the table, brushing Tosin's hair away from her face as she read. You know you look cute when you're concentrating. Her pen froze. Do you want us to get caught? He grinned. Maybe. Before she could retort, he pressed a quick kiss to her cheek. Tosin swatted him away, but her laughter spilled out despite herself. That was the moment Lee walked in. She stopped dead, eyes narrowing. Interesting. Tosin jerked back, nearly knocking over her books. It's not what it looks like. Hannah smirked. Really? Because it looks exactly like Ji-hoon Kang just kissed you. Ji-hoon didn't even flinch. Maybe he did. Tosin gaped at him. Ji-hoon. But Hannah had already turned, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she left. The fallout came faster than Tosin expected. By the next morning, whispers spread like wildfire. Did you hear? One student whispered in the corridor. Kang Ji-hoon and Tosin Ajayi. Together. No way. They hate each other. That's what makes it juicy. Tosin clenched her fists, marching toward the lecture hall. Ji-hoon caught up with her easily. Relax, he said. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal, she hissed. Half the school thinks we're dating. Which is true, he said with a shrug. Her jaw dropped. We are not. He leaned close, cutting her off. Tosin, we've kissed twice, argued like married lawyers, and you let me walk you home every night. What do you call that? Her pulse stuttered. A mistake. His smile faltered, just slightly, before he masked it with a smirk. Then maybe I should keep making mistakes. She glared, but the heat in her cheeks betrayed her. By lunchtime, Daniel Park cornered her in the cafeteria. Tosin, is it true? You and Ji-hoon. Her tray wobbled in her hands. Daniel, don't believe everything you hear. But I saw the way he looked at you during the moot court finals. Daniel pressed. It wasn't normal. If he's bothering you. He's not bothering me, she interrupted quickly. Too quickly. Daniel studied her with furrowed brows. Then what is he doing? Tosin's throat went dry. She opened her mouth, but Ji-hoon appeared at her side, sliding his arm casually across her chair. She'll tell you when she's ready, Ji-hoon said smoothly. Daniel's jaw tightened. So it's true. Tosin buried her face in her hands. That night, Tosin confronted Ji-hoon outside the dorms. You've ruined everything, she whispered. He stepped closer, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Or maybe I've just stopped hiding. Her heart raced, torn between fury and something dangerously like relief. Because deep down, Tosin knew he was right. The secret was out, and there was no going back. By Monday morning, the whispers had sharpened into daggers. As Tosin Ajayi entered the lecture hall, heads turned, conversations hushed, and eyes followed her every move. She kept her chin high, though her stomach churned. At the back of the room, she spotted Hannah leaning against the wall, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk tugging her lips. Scholarship girl thinks she can snag the air, Hannah muttered loudly enough for several students to hear. Tosin's pen tightened in her hand, but before she could respond, Kang Ji-hoon appeared at her side, slamming his books onto the desk with deliberate force. Problem? He asked coolly, his gaze locking on Hannah. She raised her brows. None at all. Just an observation. Well, observe this, Ji-hoon said, dropping into his seat beside Tosin. If anyone has a problem with Tosin, they have a problem with me. The room went silent. Hannah's smirk faltered, but she quickly spun on her heel and left. Tosin leaned close, hissing under her breath. You're making it worse. I'm making it clear, Ji-hoon replied. Let them talk. But talk wasn't the only issue. That afternoon, Professor Choi summoned them both to his office. Sit, he said, adjusting his glasses. I hear rumors. Distractions. This is law school, not a playground. Tosin's face burned. Professor, I assure you. He raised a hand. I don't care what you do outside this building. But in here I expect focus. If your entanglement affects your performance, neither of you will succeed. Ji-hoon leaned forward. Understood, sir. It won't be a problem. Outside, Tosin groaned. See what you've caused. Now we're on a professor's radar. Ji-hoon shrugged. At least he called it an entanglement. Sounds romantic. She smacked his arm. The gossip spread beyond campus. At the Kang mansion, Mrs. Ajayi overheard two maids whispering in the kitchen. Imagine the nanny's daughter in the Heir. Unbelievable. Mrs. Ajayi's jaw tightened. Later that evening, she pulled Tosin aside. Is it true? She asked gently. Tosin hesitated. Mum, it's complicated. Mrs. Ajayi studied her daughter's face, then sighed. Complicated or not, you must be careful. His world is not like ours. Even if the Kangs love us, others won't be so kind. Tosin nodded, her heart heavy. That night, Ji-hoon walked her home. For once, there was no smirk, no banter. Just quiet footsteps on the pavement. You regret it, he said suddenly. She looked up, startled. What? Kissing me. Being with me. You regret it. Her chest tightened. I don't regret it, she whispered. I'm just scared. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Then don't be. Let them talk. Let them whisper. I don't care. As long as you're with me. Tosin's heart fluttered, torn between fear and longing. For the first time, she wondered if this wasn't just rivalry turned romance, if it was something bigger, scarier, and impossible to walk away from. Tosin Ajayi tried to ignore the whispers, but they grew louder with each passing day. She kept her head buried in textbooks, her focus sharp during lectures, but the moment she stepped into the cafeteria or walked through the quad, the rumors wrapped around her like a second skin. She's using him. He's bored. She's just a phase. The heir and the nanny's daughter? Impossible. Jihoon heard them too, but unlike Tosin, he never stayed quiet. When a group of students snickered as they walked past, he turned, voice ice cold. Say it louder. I dare you. They scattered instantly. Jihoon! Tosin hissed, tugging his sleeve. You don't have to fight everyone. Yes, I do, he said firmly. They need to know you're not someone they can insult. Her chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and fear. He was reckless, but he was hers. Unfortunately, Hannah Lee wasn't done. At a student council meeting, she made her move. We can't have favoritism in competitions, she announced. If Jihoon and Tosin are romantically involved, they shouldn't be paired together for moot court. It's unprofessional. A murmur swept the room. Tosin froze, cheeks burning. Before she could reply, Daniel Park raised his hand. I agree. If they're distracting each other, the integrity of our competitions is compromised. The professor overseeing the meeting frowned. This is a serious accusation. Do either of you have proof? Hannah smirked. I saw them myself. In the library. Very unprofessional. Gasps rippled through the room. Tosin's stomach dropped. Jihoon stood, voice calm but deadly. If your definition of unprofessional is studying late with a partner, then half this campus is guilty. As for moot court, pair me with anyone you like. I'll still win. But Tosin stays where she is. She earned her place. The room fell silent. Hannah's smirk faltered, Daniel's jaw clenched, and the professor moved on without comment. But the damage was done. The whispers would grow louder. That night, Tosin and Jihoon sat on the steps outside the lecture hall, the city lights glowing in the distance. You didn't have to defend me like that, Tosin murmured. Yes, I did, he said softly. But now they'll hate me more. Then let them. I don't care. She turned to look at him, her heart pounding. For once, there was no smirk, no teasing. Just Jihoon, honest, vulnerable, and entirely hers. You're reckless, she whispered. He smiled faintly. And you're worth it. Her breath caught. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the world fading around them. Finally, Tosin leaned against his shoulder, her walls crumbling. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was fighting Jihoon. She felt like she was fighting with him, against everyone else. The semester's biggest opportunity arrived in the form of the national moot court finals. Winning would mean prestige, internships with top firms, and a clear path into the elite legal world. For Tosin Ajayi, it was everything she'd worked for. For Kang Jihoon, it was his chance to prove he was more than a Chaebol's heir. There was only one problem. The judges announced the pairings, Jihoon versus Tosin. Gasps filled the auditorium. Tosin's stomach dropped. She glanced at Jihoon across the room. He gave her a small, almost apologetic smile. This was no longer about banter or pride. This was about their futures. That evening, Tosin sat at her desk. Case files spread like a battlefield. Her phone buzzed. Jihoon, can we talk? She stared at the screen, then typed back. Not unless you want to hand me your argument in advance. His reply came instantly. I'd hand you the world, Tosin. But not this case. Her chest tightened. She shoved the phone aside, forcing herself to focus. In the days leading up to the finals, the tension was unbearable. Their classmates whispered bets, Hannah smirked openly, and Daniel muttered about fair fights. Even their professors seemed invested. This will test your professionalism, Professor Choi warned. Can you separate personal feelings from the law? Tosin swallowed hard. Could she? The night before the finals, Jihoon showed up at the Kong Mansion library, where Tosin had been working late. You should go home, he said gently. I can't. Her voice cracked. If I lose tomorrow, I lose everything I've worked for. You won't lose, he said. Not to me. She laughed bitterly. You're my biggest rival, Jihoon. You always have been. Maybe, he said softly, but I've never wanted to beat you. I just wanted to keep up with you. Her breath caught. For a moment, the silence between them hummed with everything unsaid. But Tosin shook her head. Tomorrow we're opponents. Don't go easy on me. His eyes darkened. I wouldn't dream of it. The finals were brutal. Ji-hoon opened with commanding confidence, dazzling the judges with his sharp rhetoric. Tosin countered with razor precision, dismantling his points one by one. The room buzzed with tension. Two of the brightest students in the nation battling as if the world depended on it. When it was over, the judges deliberated for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the verdict came. Tosin Ajayi, winner of the National Moot Court Finals. The audience erupted. Tosin's chest heaved with triumph, but when she looked at Ji-hoon, her joy faltered. He stood tall, applauding her with a small, proud smile. But in his eyes, she saw something else: pain, pride, and the weight of a question neither dared ask. Could love survive when victory came at the cost of one another? The auditorium emptied slowly after the National Moot Court Finals, leaving only scattered papers and the echo of applause. Tosin Ajayi sat alone on the edge of the stage, medals still heavy around her neck. She should have been celebrating. She should have been floating. Instead, her chest felt like it was carrying bricks. Because Kang Ji-hoon hadn't come to congratulate her. He had applauded politely, then disappeared. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts. She looked up, and there he was, tie loosened, eyes unreadable. "You were brilliant," Ji-hoon said quietly. "Don't," Tosin whispered. "Don't stand there and pretend you're not upset." "I'm not upset," he said. Then, after a pause, "I'm proud and terrified." Her brows furrowed. "Terrified of what?" "Of losing you." His voice cracked, just slightly. "We've been rivals our whole lives, Tosin. Competing is how we survived. But today I realize something. I don't care if I lose 100 times, if it's to you. What I can't lose is you." Her breath caught. He stepped closer, his voice raw now. "You asked me once why I don't go easy on you. It's because you're the only person I can be real with. You're my challenge, my partner, my everything." Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in years, Tosin dropped her armor. "I thought winning would feel like enough," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But it doesn't. Not without you." Ji-hoon exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. "Then we stopped fighting against each other. We fight together." And this time, when he pulled her into his arms, Tosin didn't resist. Their kiss was softer than the first, steadier than the second, carrying the weight of a choice finally made. Weeks later, the gossip had dulled into acceptance. Professors still raised eyebrows, classmates still whispered, but it no longer mattered. Ji-hoon and Tosin walked the campus together, books tucked under their arms, arguing over precedents and statutes as always. Only now, their hands brushed, and neither pulled away. During an internship interview, one senior partner chuckled. "So, the famous duo. Are you competitors or collaborators?" Tosin and Ji-hoon exchanged a glance. Then, in perfect unison, they answered, "Both." One evening, as they strolled through the Kang mansion garden, Mrs. Ajayi watched from the veranda, her smile soft. Beside her, Mrs. Kang murmured, "They remind me of us when we were young, stubborn, relentless, but inseparable." Mrs. Ajayi nodded. "They'll be fine. They've already survived the hardest part." Under the soul night sky, Ji-hoon squeezed Tosin's hand. "Do you realize we just turned a lifelong rivalry into a partnership?" he teased. Tosin smirked. "Don't get too comfortable. I still plan on beating you in court." He laughed, kissing her temple. "As long as you're beside me, I'll let you win every time." For once, Tosin didn't argue. Because she knew the truth. Their greatest victory was not the medals, not the applause, but each other. Thank you so much for staying with us till the very end of the story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear the lessons you learned and your thoughts on how we can continue improving to give you the very best. Here at Munlyt Stories, every tale is crafted with passion, care, and dedication. Our mission is simple: to entertain, inspire, and connect us all across cultures and hearts. So, keep the conversation alive in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Till next time, we are Munlyt Stories, bringing you amazing tales that touch hearts and spark imaginations. Stay blessed. Stay inspired. See you in the next story.